controversial 5 seconds of the NCAA tournament. The inbound for Texas with a 2-point lead. The freshman, Cory, called for a 5-second violation. He was looking for the timeout after that 3-point play from Derek Williams to win.
When it's late in the game, we want to switch every ball screen like that, or every pick, or any kind of screen like that, and that's what we did. And I switched on a smaller guard. I think it was Cory Joseph, and he couldn't inbound the ball to him. And Fall took care of my man as well, and they didn't get the. I guess it was 5 seconds. So I don't know if it's controversial or not, but we got the call.
Cory, the last thing he said to me was, "Coach, we have a timeout," and I said, "Yeah, if you have to use it quick." Honestly, I mean, again, I was surprised. I thought, if you watch my reaction, I was looking around like, what happened here? But again, I know it's a tough game to officiate, and you play so hard to get to this point, but that's just part of the game. I mean, it's again, I don't know. I didn't see it. I'd have to see it before I really had comments. But, again, I don't want to take away from Arizona. They played hard, they worked hard, and like I told our team, if it was or is a controversial situation, we don't need to talk about it. Other people will be talking about it for us, and because this time of year, it's what you play for, and you hope it can all go smooth, but sometimes it doesn't, and we don't know the answer to that sometimes. And I told our team maybe somewhere later on we'll find out.
Keep in mind, Texas still had a 2-point lead after that. They fouled Derek Williams. He made a 3-point play to give Arizona the win. Rick Barnes in that sound, he told you, had not seen the replay yet. This is after he has, saying, quote, "They have rules in other leagues, and even on an out-of-bounds play, there are certain things that can be corrected. In our game, there is not. We've got to be willing to make the rules that are right, because at the very end, if you truly want the players to determine it, the officials have to be willing. The NCAA has to be willing to say, okay, we're going to get this right." In summary, Rick Barnes says, let it be determined in the hands of the players, not the officials. We heard from Coach Barnes saying, he told Cory Joseph, you call a timeout, call it quickly. Even if it was right a millisecond before the 5-second violation was called, should that timeout still have been granted, Coach?
Absolutely. A few years ago, as we know, maybe 10 years ago, once 80% of the count had elapsed, you couldn't call timeout. But they changed that rule. They changed that rule almost 8 to 10 years ago. You have the full 5 seconds in which to call a timeout or inbound the basketball. And as we're looking at the clip, when you watch the official hand the ball to Cory Joseph, before he hands the ball to Cory Joseph, and he counts it off, there's 3, there's 4, it's almost like it appears that Joseph calls the timeout before the official gets to the 5 count. And when we timed it back in the studio, back at where the statisticians were, it was like 4.5 seconds. The last thing, I talked to 2 head of officials at 2 Big Six conferences. They both agreed that under 2 minutes, the referee should be able to go to the monitor and correct errors for out-of-bounds situation, who the ball went off of whose hands. And one of the commissioners said they're going to make that proposal to the NCAA Rules Committee. But tough play right there for Texas.
Yeah, but you know what, though? And I love Rick, and he was pretty classy in the press conference. Most of those guys were. That was a common theme. Most of them didn't really get very irate about it, Lorenzo Romar and other ones. But the fact of the matter is, they had a chance. They gave up 2 offensive rebounds. Even if they give them that timeout, there's no guarantee they get the ball in bounds on the next possession. They could have stopped them on the ensuing inbounds pass. They could have scored on the final possession. So it's just convenient to dump the whole thing in the lap of the referee. Was that a perfect call? No, it wasn't. We're talking about a half second. They had 5 chances in there for the players. If you want the players to decide the game, the players had a chance to decide that game.
Well, there's no question, and I think as a coach, those always hurt because you're always, you want it to be perfect, but I would agree with you. You can go through all those games. Jamie Dixon made a great point late. We focus on that last play, but you go back to the Pitt-Butler game, if we make a foul shot. How about Pittsburgh on the possession before, shot clock violation, up 1, 20 seconds to go. So there's always a series of events prior to those. You just hope they get it right. And I'll say this, for the most part, and you look at all the calls, they have got them right for the most part.
On that situation, though, it looked like the official thought that it was the old days and you couldn't get that timeout after you hit 4 seconds on the count. I think he got confused there, gave the 5-second call, and it shouldn't have been that way.
Well, let's take a look at what the officials had to say, because we heard from Rick Barnes. Dino Gaudio, you broke down the rule that within 80%, once you got past that of the allotted time for that penalty, you can't call the timeout.
That was the old rule
10 years ago.
Really, now you can call it.
You can call it at any time. Let's see what the official had to say after the game when he was asked about this situation. Richard Cartmel, the game official, said, quote, "I had 5 seconds before the kid turned and signaled a timeout. I had to make a decision whether it was 5 seconds or a timeout, and I made the decision it was 5 seconds because I had counted 5 seconds before he called timeout." But Bob, when you read inside what Richard is saying, it seems like it was so close, a bang play. I know in baseball we say tie goes to the runner. Situation like this, if it's that close, does tie go to the player?
Well, and you know what? This is going to sound like we're really splitting hairs, but in fairness, guys, you know the mechanics, and that's why they're so assessed by their mechanics. 5 doesn't come till that 5th chop gets all the way to the back. And as you pointed out, Dino, he gets to 4, then he starts 5 and throws his hand straight up in the air. That is the legitimate objection that you can have, because really, you know, whether you think he's doing it too slow or too fast, when he hits here is when 5 comes. Till that point, he's allowed to call timeout, so that's tough.
When you watch him on the chop, the first 2 were slow, and those last 3 were fast. Those were fast chops. And then if you watch
the dreaded fast chop. Boy, I hate that, don't you?
And if you watch the replay, Cory Joseph is looking at the official calling timeout. So they're looking at each other, and there's no timeout. But I thought 3, 4, and 5 was a fast chop.
Officials are human as well, and he's feeling the pressure of that situation. I think he did accelerate his count as he was moving through that, and I think he just messed up.
I got an iPad, I'm online, we got all this technology, and they're still chopping at 5? I mean, about a little 5-button thing or something. I mean, that would make more sense.
Well, and something, too, as well, in coaches, we always, you know, the hardest thing to do sometimes is get it in. You have to get it in. I think they could have done a much better job of cutting, finding space, getting open. But sometimes late-game situations, we saw it in the North Carolina-Washington games, it's difficult sometimes to enter the ball.
It wasn't 5 Mississippi. It's more like 5 Texas. It wasn't Mississippi.
5 Maine. According to Paul, last there were 5 Maine.
Paul talking about chops. Is it dinner time? Or fast chops, my friend?
Well, there was another situation. We reviewed it quickly with Washington and North Carolina.